Hello everybody, welcome to Conventional Wisdom Sucks. I'm Ann Riley and today I'm outside. It's a beautiful warm day but very windy, so if a few gusts come up when I speak today, I'm sorry in advance. Okay, so today we just spent the last 2 days talking about the existence of God and the truth, the provability, I should say, of the established religions. Now, I want to have a note of explanation here, or make a note of explanation here. I realize that it is very not popular to make a statement or an explanation about the existence of God and to call it out as unprovable. It's not popular. I'm pretty convinced that if you want to tank your popularity and lose customers and lose viewers, you just have to, say religion or God doesn't really exist or doesn't provably exist. Bad things will happen. But I did this anyway, and I did it for what I think is a really good reason. I think that, for the last 1,000 years, we're having a growing conflict between the basically two mindsets that people live by. There's the factual, scientific side, where, in order to be a true statement, it has to be reliably and repeatably proven. And then there's the other side, which is kind of where religion, the legacy of religion, which is that, that God exists and tells us how to live, and even though it's not provable, those are the instructions we take to live by. And I think these two sides have been growing in conflict. And after World War II, I think this conflict really accelerated. But nobody talks about it as a conflict of these two sides. They use proxies. We have fights like red versus blue, progressive versus conservative, modern versus old. So these are proxies, I think, and this is sort of my thinking has been going for the last few years, is that these are proxies for this real conflict that's growing between the fact side and the non-fact side. So let's kind of look at where we are today. So let's first look at science and the whole side of the world where facts have to be proven, right? Mathematical theorems have to be proven. All the factual data that we develop has to be tested by other scientists and accepted and proven. And if it isn't, then it is it's thrown out as science. It's not accepted in the science club. So what happens when you have these facts? You're building a really strong, sturdy foundation, right? You're building something that can be built upon. And that's why, we started after World War II, and I think the one computer or the few computers that existed were the size of a big room, right? And now we carry around our computers into nice little foresty glens like this, and we can record something and tell it to the whole world. This is how science works. It has these sturdy foundations and it can build amazing, amazing things. So that's one side. And on the other side, I think there's another thing that's happening, especially with religion. As people have gotten to think more about things, they've also been thinking more about alternatives to religion. So that instead of just having this God and these instructions from these leaders of a church, people are beginning to discover spirituality as a choice that they make. So you're separating the sort of spiritual, moral, experiential feeling world from that people always associated with religion to be its own thing. And people are really, that's becoming very much more popular. So if you look at religion, imagine if you're a super religious person, you're feeling threatened from two ends. On one hand, you're losing the whole this is how the world works and should be from science, because they're saying, no, this is how the world works and we can show you. And then you have this concept of spirituality and morality that people are taking upon themselves and saying, no, I don't need a God to understand how I fit in the world. And I understand that this is a choice I'm making about how I live in the world. And so religion is probably feeling threatened by both of these forces. So what do people do when they're threatened? You know what the first thing often people do is they double down. They hold tighter to their beliefs. And I think this is what we're seeing with religion these days. And I think it's what it's the source of the polarization that we're seeing, not just in our country, but in the world. We're seeing people who are very threatened and they're fearful because, look, if you lose religion, you lose your path to eternal life. And that is really scary to people. They don't like the concept of dying and then being just part of whatever exists after we die. And so that is scary. And so people want to hold on to that. And also, I think people, they start becoming the victims. I talked to a very religious person the other day who was like, secularism is being forced on me. And, I was very surprised by that opinion because that's not how I process the world. But that is how maybe a lot of religious people do process it. The science is equivalent to secularism being foisted upon them. So that's a very interesting perspective. The other thing too is they'll go out and attack. They're going to go out and say science is bad and that evolution doesn't exist, and we don't want to study epidemics because that's just not something we want to do because God's going to take care of us. So I think this is what's happening. We're setting up this big conflict and it's coming to a head. And I think this kind of can be an explanation for the phenomenon of Trump. And I think Trump is not a religious person, but there's a big group of religious people who have accepted him as the leader of a religion or as a force for the religion, not because he believes, but because he will take them backward. And that's what the big conflict underneath is that science is always moving. It's relentlessly moving and building on more and more facts. And religion says, nope, you got to go back to this original belief, and this is what we want. So Trump is the person who's going to take them back. It doesn't matter if he's not religious. It's that he's going to take them back to the place where religion is the ruler again. And so I think that's what's happening here. So that is where I'm going to stop today. I have a lot of thoughts about where we go from here, but we're going to save that for our next episode. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.